Hi everyone, welcome back to Metaphysical Mondays at the Fossil Cartel. I've got a special guest with us today. I'm really excited. She's an astrologer. Her name is Tula Fae Mooney.
Hi everyone.
And she's going to share with us how we can use crystals and stones in association with astrology. And first off, I'd like to welcome Tula. Say hi everyone, say hi to Tula.
Thank you.
And I'd like to ask you, Tula, how did you get into astrology to begin with? And also, how long have you been doing it?
So when I first started getting into astrology, that was because my father worked with aerospace. He was an aerospace engineer. And so...
A little louder.
Oh, so yeah. And my father was working with aerospace engineering. And so I knew that my last name was Mooney. And when I was younger, my elementary school teacher taught us about how our last names were associated with what our families did. And I was like, oh, that makes sense because my father works with space.
Oh, cool.
And, yeah, and so it was a really roundabout aspect, but when I was going through college, the way that I would procrastinate is to dive into astrology and study astrology when I didn't want to be studying what I was studying. And which was actually neuroscience at the time, and then marketing later on. And so I really liked the aspect of knowing what was going on in the outer world, right? Because we can get really caught up in what's going on in our own life, and then understanding that we're constantly moving and changing.
Yeah. Check out her dress, everyone. It's got, can you see it? It's got moons on it. It's really cool. Yeah. Celestial bodies. So I learned about astrology years ago when I was in my 20s, and my boyfriend I was living with at the time, he was psychic, and extremely psychic. He did psychic readings, and he also knew a lot about astrology, and I learned quite a bit from him. Not tons and tons, but enough. And I understand that there's different kinds of astrology, there's Vedic astrology and stuff. What kind of astrology do you practice?
So I do a multimodal type of astrology, so it really depends on what the person's looking for, because Vedic astrology, we'll talk a little bit about Jyotish, but that is a lot better for predictions of broader things, but Western astrology is the one that's most common, and that's more about how we know ourselves as a person and our personality, where Vedic can get more into our ancestral lineage. So I would say that I'm most versed in Western astrology, but I feel pretty comfortable with Vedic astrology, and we'll talk about Jyotish astrology. Yeah,
so she was telling me a little bit about Jyotish, and that has to do with using crystals in astrology. Is that considered Jyotish? Is that Vedic, or is that its own thing?
Yeah, so Jyotish is another word for Vedic astrology.
Oh.
So, but Jyotish is a practice of astrology, and that's using its correspondences, whether that is using crystals, whether that's using herbs, whether that is practicing yoga. So, but crystals are definitely the most prominent because you can wear certain crystals to help balance out certain planets that are considered malefic. Because Vedic astrology is older astrology, so it has more dire terminology malefic, but it doesn't have to have such a negative connotation. But anyways, we can wear crystals that correspond to our planets that help us balance out say a Mars that's not in the best place.
So I don't know about you guys, but I am fascinated by astrology, right? I mean, if you've ever had your reading done, if you haven't, I highly recommend you get your chart done and get a reading done. And then, so besides our natal charts, where the planets were when you were born, which determines your personality and how your life's going to work out and what works better for you and what doesn't, there's also the transiting planets, right? Because the planets are still moving, and so they make aspects to the planets where they were when we were born. So, sometimes you could be having a positive transit, and sometimes it can be more challenging. So that's also fascinating too. Okay, so what can you tell us about using crystals in association with astrology?
So we'll begin with something that's pretty simple. Something that I hear more and more often is people talking about Mercury Retrograde, which we are under right now. And we will be until August 1st. Mercury goes retrograde about 3 to 4 times a year.
Before you go farther, can you explain what retrograde is for those people that don't?
Yeah, so retrograde is when, because Mercury moves so fast, there are points from our perspective on Earth where it looks like Mercury is actually going backwards. And so that's considered retrograde, when the planet looks like it's going backwards in orbit, but really it's Earth moving faster in its orbit from the other planet itself. And because they're on like an elliptical orbit, there are times where like the planets cross paths and it looks like the other planet is going backwards. So Mercury goes retrograde, when it does, it's about like a 3-week event.
And what does it mean, like, to us, that when Mercury's retrograde?
So when any planet is retrograde, it's like more of an internalization, but it also can like be bringing up emotional aspects that we have to work through, or things with our family. But Mercury itself represents a planet of like communication, of finances, of travel, and technology. So when that planet, Mercury itself, goes retrograde, that's when we can have like miscommunications. That's when like technology can be a little bit like finicky. And so that's a retrograde that happens the most often every year.
And I understand, like, it's not a good time to sign a contract when Mercury's retrograde. Anything to do with communications can be messed up. There could be total miscommunication. So it's better to not sign contracts during Mercury retrograde.
And to make a big purchase, like buying a house, you don't want to sign a mortgage when Mercury's in retrograde.
And so how can we use crystals to help us with something like that?
So crystals have an interesting sense of like having, balancing gravity. So in the way that Earth itself is said to be about 13 million years old, and crystals have been around a lot longer than we have, and so therefore they have much more of, I would say, consciousness, but in a different way than like the consciousness that we have. They just have this essence that we can receive when they're in our presence, when we hold them or when we wear them. And so should we just start?
Yeah, let's start.
All right, so the one that I recommend for Mercury retrograde, this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, hi, Anne.
Wow. And so the one that I recommend for any Mercury retrograde would be Celestite. And so Celestite is ruled by Gemini, and I'll show this one. And so this will really help with astral travel, but also traveling as well. So if you're traveling, if you have to travel during Mercury retrograde, pack Celestite with you. The way that it helps is that it just makes us remember clear communication, and of course it just helps with like the emotional field and the energy field when we are holding it. And so if you have to, maybe you're a writer, maybe you write a lot of blog or like content creation, or maybe you do have to draft a contract, because we can't just like stop communication and stop travel for those like 3 weeks, 3 to 4 times out of the year that there's Mercury retrograde. So when there is something that you have to draft or write up, have Celestite with you when you're traveling or writing during Mercury retrogrades.
That's good to know. That's really good to know. Thank you. Oh, and I wanted to say, if you have any questions, we'll be taking questions at the end, so you could type them in and we will try to answer them for you. Okay, what's next?
Next is Amber. So today the sun goes into Leo, and so Amber is a great stone to wear and to have during Leo season, and also like Aquarius season. And so I love to wear amber, but amber also helps with just like that sunny disposition, and really connecting with what our heart wants. And so the connection of ourselves, the connection to ourselves, and then how we want to see it in the broader perspective. So during Leo season, we can be very sunny, we can be very social, and almost to a point that we kind of forget ourselves a little bit because we get really caught up in the sociability. Usually there's a lot of festivals that go on during Leo season, and so amber just helps like us being balanced. But amber is also interesting because it rules an axis, so the opposite signs. So the opposite sign of Leo is Aquarius, and so they're opposite sides of the universe, right? Our solar system. And so when we wear amber, it's for that axis of like Leo and Aquarius, which is like the self to the greater universal truths.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then we're going to get into some crystals that are going to help with like longer transits. So we've already talked about like the short transit, which is Mercury Retrograde with Celestite, and then we talked about the stone that's like great for this season that's coming up, which is Leo season. And then I'm going to get into like the longer transits. So there are, of course, like Earth, you know, orbits around the sun every 365 days ish. We have a leap year this next year, and so there are planets that are further out that take a lot longer. And so for instance, it takes Saturn about 18 months to change signs, not even to, because we change signs almost like every 28 days, but it takes Saturn like 18 months to change one sign. And so Saturn is going to be in Capricorn until 2020. And so this is a big transit. We have Saturn and Pluto that are in Capricorn until 2020. So the next few stones that I'm going to show you is about Saturn and Capricorn. And basically we are restructuring, because Capricorn can like rule business, it rules like the finances that we want, it rules the kind of life that we want, like the kind of career that we want to have, how we want our business to look like, and also like the money like in our bank account, like how we want to be shown to the world and how we want our life structured. And so for this restructuring to happen, there's a little bit of discomfort that everyone's going through because we have to like keep building. Everyone has this sense to keep building what they want to see in their life. And so these next few stones is to really keep a clear head during that. Is this Jet?
No, this is Jet.
Okay. And so Jet is really good for helping, like, because all of these next stones are ruled by Capricorn. So Jet just like helps with being balanced, being grounded. And so in those times that you are feeling like there's a lot of overwhelm because of the things that you want your life to look like and the steps that it's going to take to get there, you can wear Jet, or you can wear Jet, and that just helps with like not getting overwhelmed. It can help ease like all of that like energy that can like, you know, be a bit negative. So Jet's really great with that.
Jet is carbonized wood, by the way.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty rare.
Oh, nice.
We have some though.
And then of course, as we are building what we want to see in our life, then there's like a step-by-step process. And so malachite is really great with that. You can wear malachite. Malachite is also ruled by Scorpio, which is really interesting. So it can be like a spiritual transforming stone. Maybe there is a spiritual connection that you want to restructure your spirituality. We have a guest. So maybe you want to restructure your spirituality, or you just want, so malachite helps with a like decision by decision and helping with that inspiration and helping with that decision making and to see it through to the end. So and malachite also helps with finances. So if you want to go and like, if you're going into a meeting with your boss to ask for a raise, it's great to wear malachite there. If you're going to go into the bank for a loan, it's great to wear malachite when you're applying for a loan, especially all the way throughout 2020 because of that Capricorn influence that malachite naturally has.
Cool. That's good to know, huh?
It is. And then, excuse me, our last one is trilobite, which is, again, bringing that connection of like the older Earth into now. Right, because how long have trilobites been around?
550 million years old is the oldest trilobite. This is the oldest trilobite. That's the oldest species before they developed eyes. And then here's where they developed cheeks on either side where the eyes will eventually form. So we have all different species of trilobites from different countries. These are from Utah. And we have pendants and earrings, and there's a bracelet. And we have little ones and bigger ones.
That's amazing. Yeah, trilobites are very fascinating to me, mostly just because of like their age, and but they're also like ruled by Capricorn as well. So they, I would say like not ruled, but like in partnership with Capricorn. And so when we wear trilobites like help with leadership And I would actually recommend that you do get the jewelry of these, just because it's easier to like have around, especially when you're working in the office.
Oh, we also have rings too.
Cool. And so actually, if you wear, like, the fingers are associated with the planets, and so funny enough, the middle finger is associated with Saturn, so you can wear it.
Oh, yeah.
And so so trilobite like helps with management and leadership and perseverance. And so again, you know, the theme that's going to be throughout 2020 is like building what you want to see in your business, building what you want to see in the life that you have. And so of course there's going to be like management of community, I would say, and of how you want to work in your business, and if you lead a team or if you lead your coworkers. Maybe right now you're like leading from the bench and you like have in mind about that promotion that you want. So trilobite is going to help with just like that perseverance and that patience, because again, jet's going to help in the moment of like the overwhelm. Malachite can help with like connecting back to the heart with that, and then trilobite is going to help with that perseverance and knowing what decisions to make for like the greater good. So a lot of times leaders and like business owners have to make decisions that are not like the best in the moment, may not feel right, but it's like the best overall in the end.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions?
So in terms of, that's great for like what's happening to everyone right now.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like people's own natal charts and using crystals for that, can you give me like one example of how that might work?
So when you know your chart, you'd be able to like look into it a little bit more. But say like, for example, my sun is in Aries, and so when the sun is like maybe in Libra, or when the sun is like not in my sign, like when it's not my season, I may feel like kind of funky, so I can like wear stones that associate with Aries. So like if you're a Leo, like Leo season, it's really wonderful to have like amber, but it's also fun to have amber anytime when you start to like not really feel like yourself. And then, you know, going deeper into your chart, you know, that's really something that I recommend that you look into. But also, if there is like some aspects that we have that are not the most harmonious, then we can use crystals to kind of balance that out, because when we have like disharmonious aspects in our chart, then that's something that we want to really learn in this life that brings up pretty clearly for us. And so yeah, we can use that, we can use stones in that way. And then of course, like using stones just like during transits, like retrogrades, are, you know, just helping us remember that and remember our intention. And then just to actually physically hold something is really great for like learning and knowing our intention, and then like the metaphysical properties of the stones themselves.
And then like, I know sometimes people have like a lot of fire in their chart, and like no water, for instance, so maybe they'd want to bring in a stone that represents water, like the blue colored stones or something, to balance out.
Yeah, so like the stones that you could wear in water, so like malachite, it's not recommended to put in water.
Not in water, but just stones that kind of represent more of the water energy.
So like for someone that's really heavy and like in fire signs, you know, I'd recommend like mother of pearl. It's really nice. Or to wear pearls. And then and then also like jet is really good. So like those really grounding, like earthy types of stones.
Especially if you have too much air in your chart. So you definitely want some grounding stones if you have too much air in your chart.
And too
Hi,
much
Megan.
water.
And too much water.
Yeah.
So it's really good to know your chart, because your sun sign is only a small part of your total makeup. So it's really good to know your whole chart.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because there can be up to like 144,000 different combinations. I know, because we have like, you know, we have all of our planets and then they're in 12 different signs. So we're all complex and individual.
Yeah, and then they all aspect each other in different ways and stuff. So
yeah.
Anybody have any questions for us out there?
Yeah, let us know.
So Tula does readings for people. If you're interested, she can do your chart for you. And she has a website. What's your website?
Just Tula Fae, FAE.com. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you will get a PDF that shows you like the crystals per, you know, sign. So that can start you on your journey of like using crystals with astrology.
Excellent.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. It looks like we're not getting any questions at the moment. If you do have a question, put it in the comments and Tula will read them later and answer them for you. Anything else?
That's it.
That's it? Okay. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. I hope that was beneficial and helpful for you. I hope you learned something. I did, for sure.
So did I.
And good luck with the rest of the Mercury Retrograde transit. It's almost over. And have a great rest of your week. Check back on Wednesday for Wednesday updates. Thanks for watching. Bye. Whoops.